The lights go out at midnight. If you don't finish dorm sprint, you don't come back. That's what we joked about the night. I learned the joke was a warning. Back then I lived in the old dorm complex. 3 long buildings bent into a half circle, linked by a third-floor hallway so absurdly long everyone measured it in steps and bravado. Twice a year we ran the 3x500 sprint. Doors propped open, a single continuous dash down roughly 1,500 feet of plaster and flickering fluorescence. The twist was childish genius. They tied the whole thing to a timer, 3 minutes of light, then pitch black. And before the sprint, because we were clever and foolish, each runner had to slam a 15-ounce cocktail of hellish proportions. It was warm, disgusting, and guaranteed to unsteady your legs and your sense of consequence. There was a legend welded to the tradition. If the lights went out on you, if you didn't make it to the other side, you didn't return. People laughed it off. Nobody liked to be the one who didn't laugh. I was a second-year law student with a chip on my shoulder and a loud mouth named Neil who ran faster than he deserved. I drank my cocktail, shoved the nausea down my throat, and sprinted. The hallway blurred, plaster, doors, the sickly buzz of the fluorescence. I pushed Neil for the hell of it, because losing to him meant a year of ridicule. I was in second place and thinking about crossing the finish when my foot snagged on someone's stride. We tangled. I hit the floor hard enough to crack the air out of me. A dozen pairs of feet kept going. The passer who clipped me scrambled up and ran, limping, his breath a ragged score. I lay on my back, cheeks against the cold concrete, watching the ceiling like you watch the sky before a storm. My head throbbed. The alcohol made time slippery. 3 minutes felt like less. Then the lights died. Dark folded down like a lid. For a second I thought it was the joke, somebody flicking a switch, the whole dorm erupting in prankster laughter. I called out for the lights, for Neil, for anyone. My voice bounced off something not quite wall and returned thin and foreign. The black stayed. I fumbled my phone. The little flashlight smeared a narrow circle of pale that didn't to push the dark back so much as betray it. The hallway was wrong. Doors I remembered, numbers, dents, that stupid flyer for last year's blood drive were gone. The walls were smooth. It was like the dorm had been skinned and stretched over an empty frame. Panic smells like copper. My legs started working on their own, hobbling forward because standing still is the worst way to die in your head. I called out again. My voice came back to me. Hello? Is anyone there? It sounded like an echo, but it also sounded like me, like somebody else had tucked my voice around a corner and put it in a jar. The flashlight picked up shapes. The seam where the banister ended, a scuff on the plaster, the scattered glitter of an emergency light that the dark didn't want to let glow. Then came footsteps. At first, they were a trickle far down the corridor. 1, 2, 3, then a drumbeat, a stamp that shook the floorboards like someone running a herd through the dorm. The sound approached, all patience and thunder. I froze. Something enormous loomed in the beam. It wasn't human in proportion. It filled the corridor top to bottom, wall to wall, a shape that made the air itself want to run. I ran. It ran with me. The thing didn't breathe. It moved like a mass of intent, like every heavy object in a junkyard suddenly had a mind. My phone skidded across the terrazzo and I dove for it. The beam showed me my own hands shaking, the throttle of my breath. The stomping stopped just as I curled into a ball on the floor. Silence returned like a judgment. For 4 hours, my phone said later. My gut says forever. I wandered. But time was lying. My battery drained. The corridor shifted while I moved. Doors appearing where there had been blank wall, doors that opened onto nothing when I twisted the knob. I banged on one and a hollow thud answered, like a drum played by wet hands. I thought I understood the joke then. Run in the dark or the dark runs you. I kept walking because forward felt like survival. Bodies started to appear, not at first. Just outlines that the phone caught and then the dark swallowed. A pile of rags, a humped silhouette, a pair of legs that looked too thin to have days left. Then more. Then a corridor crowded with likenesses of people who had stopped running. A skeletal drunk slumped against a door, a face with teeth gone brittle like driftwood, a hand that still clutched a doorknob, as if the door might open itself to mercy. The smell hit like smashed flowers left in the sun. Rot. The taste of it settled on my tongue, and bile rose up and bit the back of my throat. I stepped gingerly between corpses that were too human and not human enough. Some were bones and dust. Some were fresh, skin like paper, eyes blank with meaning. I told myself they were props. I told myself my brain had made them from fear. But props don't breathe, and props don't drip. This place wasn't a party prank. This corridor ate jokes. A pale light winked in the far dark like a star caught behind glass. I rushed toward it the way you sprint for a train that will take you home. The bodies thinned as I ran. Maybe I was close. Maybe this would end. Then something low and sodden moved across the floor ahead of me. At first I thought it was a mound of clothes. Then it unmade itself into a grotesque, obscene thing. A heap of flesh and bone stitched by some mad seamstress of the void. Limbs welded to torsos and angles bodies should not make, a mouth torn across the mass like the split of a rotten melon. And in one skeletal hand, grotesquely, painfully, a globe that pulsed with light, like an anglerfish dragging its lamp through the deep. The thing slithered, a tide of meat and ruin, and the light it held woke every scent a living person could have. I ran. There was a door ahead. Light spilled under its threshold like salvation. Every nerve in my legs wanted it. I slammed my shoulder into the jamb and threw it open. I dove inside. I woke up on the real hallway floor, fluorescent overheads humming normality, bodies, my dorm mates, surrounding me in a scatter of sneakers and stunned faces. Neil slapped me on the back and said, "Dude, you passed out." Lights blinked for a second and then came back. "You good?" My phone told me 45 minutes had passed since the lights cut. My watch said a second. My throat tasted like rust. I told them I tripped and hit my head. I told them that I'd been seeing things. They laughed and offered water and pushed their phones into my face to prove the security cameras showed nothing but a blackout and 20 guys running across a hallway. But when I looked at the wall where I'd crashed, there was a smear, not blood, something darker and tackier, like someone had painted the plaster with old nightmares. My palm came away sticky. I scrubbed it in the sink until my skin burned. They said it was just a blackout prank gone too far. That the tradition had become another story to tell sober kids. That I'd drunk too much and my head had filled with theater. Maybe they were right. Maybe my nerves had unstitched a seam of reality and everything slipped through. But some truths don't need to be proved on camera. They sting your eyes and leave a taste behind. I don't run sprints anymore. I don't drink warm cocktails or chase a silly challenge down a dorm corridor. Neil still brags about finishing first that night. He likes to see the slight hitch under my eye when he says it. He keeps up the old jokes, and the freshmen still dare each other because some braver or dumber thing keeps the tradition alive. But when the lights flicker now, the way they do sometimes in winter, like a throat clearing, I look away. I tuck the memory into some quiet place and keep my feet planted. The corridor is ordinary most of the time, paint flaking, flyers for tutoring stuck to the corkboard, the smell of boiled coffee in the morning. Ordinary enough to fool you. If you ever hear laughter at 3 in the morning near an old dorm hallway and somebody dares you to run, don't. Don't drink whatever someone passes you and don't pin your worth to a finish line a light can erase. The joke is older than you. It has teeth. Because when the lights go out, you don't get to be clever anymore. You just get to run, and sometimes if you're very unlucky, you run until the dark rearranges you into something it can carry.